Man, if yesterday was an absolute snooze fest, today absolutely delivered. Our other set of quarterfinals at the Blast Bounty Season 1 finals took place today. We saw Vitality get bested by Eternal Fire. We saw Pain try valiantly, taking NAVI to the very brink of defeat, but failing to deliver the kill shot in 2 overtimes. In the first series, we saw nothing but relentless fragging, unstoppable aggression, and a Xantares who continues to take the scalps of the very best players in the world one by one. In the other, it was some of the most intense tactical Counter-Strike I've seen in a best of 3 in a long time, which means today we have an absolute ton to get through. So, hopefully you guys do enjoy the coverage. Before we get started, make sure you take a second, leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm. And before we get started, I would like to thank today's sponsor. That's right, this video was sponsored by Skin Club. They are one of the most popular case opening sites in the scene with over 100 custom cases backed by its provably fair system. You can open cases individually or play against other users in case battles, whether there's against other users on the site, your own friends, or privately with bots if solo queuing isn't just a necessity, but a lifestyle. But that's not all. Skin Club also runs monthly events with free rewards to earn, free daily cases for a little extra Skrilla on top, and if you don't like what you got, you can try and upgrade to something else unless you are me specifically. If you want to play on Skin Club, you can do so at the top link in the description and get a 7% deposit bonus when you do so by topping off your account with crypto, credit card, or skins from your inventory. Please gamble responsibly and make sure you are over 18 and live in a country or jurisdiction that does not restrict gambling. Never gamble to make a profit and only play with money you are okay losing. Gambling can be a serious addiction, and if you or a loved one are suffering in the US or Canada, you can reach out toll-free to 1-800-GAMBLER to receive help. Be safe and well, and thank you to Skin Club for sponsoring this video. So, I think there's no better place to start when talking about Eternal Fire versus Vitality than to talk about precedent. Because this is now, over the last year, Eternal Fire have beaten Vitality 3 times, twice in best of 3 series, once in best of 1s, and each time, Eternal Fire has looked like the better team in pretty much every respect. And the first thing I would like to point out is that ZywOo just didn't really show up in the way you would expect him in this kind of game. That's not to say that ZywOo was bad, because rarely if ever will there be a truly bad ZywOo game, but the problem with him as a player, and one of the big things I'm very critical of, is that he doesn't often seem to rise to the moment in big game situations if he starts off slow. If ZywOo comes out the gate gunning, he will stay good and oftentimes dominate, but if ZywOo has a rough start to a series, he doesn't seem to have that ability to find the extra gear. This is 100% something I've commented on in the past, and it just bears worth repeating. ZywOo is never going to deliver a truly awful performance. I'm fully confident in that. But the gap between his floor as a player and his peak as a player is just not that wide. Whereas other contemporaries, players you would put in the conversation as the best of all time, like Simple, do have that ability to rise up to big game moments. They will, when their team is down, often find the hole and take over games in major ways. What's particularly weird about ZywOo when it comes down to these discussions is that it's very hard to substantiate these things beyond an eye test argument, because every time you look into the numbers behind ZywOo, you see why he's at worst the 3rd best player in the world. His average stats are just that high, but there does seem to be a discrepancy once you get into big playoff games where he just doesn't quite play to that same level. I've referenced these numbers before, but this is courtesy from Nero's website, and if you don't follow Nero on Twitter, you should. He is one of the best resources we have in the scene for referencing advanced statistics, and the way he collects and represents data is very easy to digest and read, in my opinion. And when you compare someone like ZywOo to m0NESY, you see that ZywOo, on average, is a better player by stats like rating, his accumulated stats over the year. On paper, you would say that ZywOo was a better player than m0NESY last year. But one thing to note, and I think this is the thing that separates the two of them, why m0NESY got 2nd and ZywOo got 3rd, is that when you compare their performances in arena games, elimination games versus top 5 teams, there is a discrepancy where ZywOo goes from a 1.35 rating player for the year, he drops down to 1.24 in arena games, 1.25 versus top 5 teams, 1.28 in elimination games. whereas with Muncie, he averaged a 1.27 rating for the year, but in arena games, he rose up to a 1.35. In elimination games, he stayed relatively the same at a 1.28. And when he did have a drop-off versus top 5 teams, the drop from a 1.27 to a 1.22 is not nearly as significant as the drop from a 1.35 to a 1.25. And I think that correlates to the eye test. Vitality were so good at making it to the playoffs of damn near every event last year, but whether it was the quarters, the semis, sometimes the finals, they would flame out at the most pivotal moment, and that's why they only managed to capture one elite trophy that year. That, of course, being their Cologne run. And keep in mind, in that grand finals against NAVI, ZywOo dropped 100 fucking kills in 4 maps. He was unbelievable in that final, but that was when he was playing to the level we would expect of him. Today, he did not, and it mattered so much. Because getting into the game specifically, Eternal Fire were, no joke intended, on fire, in a way that Vitality simply couldn't stop. Xantares got every fucking thing he wanted on Anubis. He took whatever peak he wanted, he could not be stopped, he'd swing anywhere, get doubles, triples, get the headshot, it didn't matter. He had 29 kills in regulation. In the first half, Xantares had 17 kills, ZywOo had 6. Now granted, it's Anubis, so to some extent a dominant T-side start is what you would expect. But it's very clear that Vitality are not comfortable on this map. Another thing I would like to point out, once again going to Nero's own data here, ZywOo's worst map seems to be Anubis. He does not perform to the level you would expect of him on this map. It's noticeably worse than the other maps Vitality plays, absent Vertigo, as now it's no longer in the map pool and they ban Ancient. Every other map he's very consistent on, while being very good on maps like Inferno and Nuke. But on Anubis, he is just far below his normal level, and I think we see that. Something about Vitality's CT defense seems incredibly flat, uninspired, and very unwilling to take fights. Now, some of this is definitely Robs is not fully bedded into the team. We saw some coordination issues on the B side around Mezzi specifically, but they also don't seem to take some of the cues from other good Anubis teams and play the CT side aggression in such a way to limit the map control that teams get access to. You add on to that just the incredibly hot hand that Eternal Fire brought into the series, and it's no surprise that even with a good second half comeback where ZywOo finally started to put some numbers on the board, there was just no stopping Eternal Fire. This is a 13-9 game, but absurdly dominant from the Turks. And when we move over to Mirage, honestly, I am shocked this game ended up being as close as it is, because it felt like Vitality couldn't find a frag or a round to save their lives on this T side. This was anemic T side Counter-Strike from Vitality, and as I think correctly pointed out by Maui Snake on the analyst desk afterwards, this is going to be the biggest issue for them without Spinks, is who's going to be the initiator. Robs is a passive player. ZywOo plays back in the pack generally as a rule. Mezzi and Apex are here to set up the other stars, and Flames can do it, but he's not going to do it to the same level Spinks did. There needs to be a reshuffling to how this team approaches their T-side rounds, and again, also to fairly add on, Eternal Fire stayed red hot the entire series, especially through this first half. Woxic couldn't miss a fucking shot. There were rounds where he was hitting teardrop flicks that only he can do with his sensitivity. You had Xantares getting insane 180 turnarounds in the connector. Everything possible was going correct for Eternal Fire, which is why they meteored out to a 9-3 lead. And I think we all thought that this series was over in the second half pistol round. Not only did it feel like there was no way Vitality was going to lose the situation after ZywOo gets the double from CT spawn, leaving Yada in a 1v3 situation, but the fact that this kid, the newest addition to the team, executes this clutch under playoff pressure is so admirable. He plays the intel perfectly. He knows that because Vitality really don't want to give up 1v1s, they're likely to hesitate on fully rotating over to B even though it's been a long enough time span. So that delay gives Yada kind of the perfect timing here, where he knows there's pretty much no situation where he's going to be fighting both players at once as he descends into the bomb site. But even then, Flames tucks himself into a perfect spot at the bench. He has the timing on his side, but he misses while Yada is planting the bomb, which is unreal. Yada spins out of the bomb plant, hits the one tap with the Glock. He's on 10 health in the 1v1, and it's just Apex. Apex has been in these rounds so many times throughout his career, but just this time, the young man, he's got the great angle on Apex jumping out the window, and it's a 1v3 clutch. That's the 10th round secured. You've denied the CT momentum. If you can just win this force buy, it's GG's. But because nothing's that easy, Eternal Fire were hell-bent on rushing B over and over and over again. They'd nearly win another miracle clutch with Major using an AK in a 1v3 yet again. And if Major wins that, I mean, it's just wraps, right? Like, if the IGL just beats you in a 1v3 clutch, you just say GG, fair enough, and just move on. But no, the scouts prevail, and Vitality start working a pretty good comeback. Once again, Eternal Fire, they go B far too many times. I don't know why they were so hell-bent on it, but it really allowed Vitality to get back into this game in a way that I think they really shouldn't have allowed. And the ending of this game was just so nuts, because the clutching back and forth by both teams was just such a joy to watch. Vitality find themselves far behind in round 22, going down to a 3 versus 5 deficit off the backs of good openers by Yada and Woxic. Flamesy equalizes the advantage in a big way with a huge double from underneath balcony, gets the first pick sliding down, hits a second headshot on Wakadia before going down to Xantares, and then it comes down to Mezzi in a 1v3 in CT, hits the first shot on Major. He's got Xantares low, Woxic by the stairs. Woxic misses an op shot after being so good throughout the entire game, allowing Mezzi to scoot to the site, hits a great headshot on Woxic, and finds the final shot on the low Xantares. Both those players were so good throughout this entire series. Mezzi made so many key mistakes on Anubis, but he finds this crucial round to keep them in the game and prevent match point. And then in the backbreaker, in the very next round, Woxic with a fucking Galil already has an early contender for Clutch of the Year. Like, obviously, just January, there's gonna be a lot more good plays, but Woxic's play on the B-bomb site was unreal. I was losing my goddamn mind watching it play out live. And, I mean, this was a realistic comeback for Vitality, but at the end of the day, they just gave too much leeway. They let too much stuff go down early in the game, and Zywoo could not power up fast enough to make up that deficit. So you add in a few good timely clutches, and Eternal Fire snipe a 2-0 victory over Vitality, claim all their bounty money, by the way, which I hadn't even touched on. Vitality bet the farm on this game, wisely I would say, and they lost. And Eternal Fire not only get a massive payday, they take another massive win on a top team. This run right now for Eternal Fire is incredible. Okay. For the sake of transparency, I recorded that first section on the Eternal Fire game right as the Navi and Pain series was wrapping up. I was working on getting all the demo footage for this series, and right in the middle of that, Valve decided to hit me with a beautiful gem of an update about the Season 2 of Premiere coming out next week. So as this is my job, I had to drop everything, work on that, slam out YouTube short real quick. What I'm trying to say is I work the toughest job to ever exist. You should feel bad for me, and the only way I'll feel better is if you like the video and give me more money. Are you cool on that? Anyways, dude, what a banger of a series between Navi and Pain. This was by far the best 3-game set of the tournament, there's no doubt about it. Pain were inches away from eliminating Navi, and as just a starting note, I must say it, I've been talking about Pain a lot. Every tournament they come up, I keep gassing up this team. Pain are right there. They are right on the edge of being ready to win a Tier 1 title. They now have all the pieces. They have the firepower. They have the coordination from Big Azera. The thing that they're going to lack on now is difficult playoff experiences so that you can build up the mental fortitude to survive in these kinds of games. Because what this game really boiled down to, when you get down to it, was Navi had better mental in these deep overtime situations and the ability to withstand what Pain were doing. Pain has now built up some very valuable experience in this series, and I know they will put it to good use the next time we see them. They were actually the better team in this series. While yes, the individuals from Navi, like Wonderful, Emma, JL on Mirage, were fantastic. The tactics and the coordination from Pain are some of the best I have seen at this tournament, and if they could continue to refine that style, top 10 feels like a certainty, and who knows what their ceiling might be from there. Getting into specifics, we open up on Dust 2, and Navi were very strong out the gate. The first half of their CT defense was quite dominant. Emma out the gate was just unkillable. He ended up with like something stupid like 15 some odd kills by the time we were getting to like round 7 or 8. He was just fragging out of control, and Pain didn't really have an answer. Now, Pain, they did good to knuckle down and get a couple of T rounds on the board to keep things competitive. We go into the second half with a 5-7 deficit, and just like NAVI dominated on their CT half, Pain were cooking right out the gate, winning the pistol round, converting the force buys thereafter, and keeping their economy strong for most of the second half. Despite Wonderful also heating up to match Emma's output, outside of those two, the fragging from NAVI was falling quite flat. JL, Bit, and especially Alexi B were mostly non-factors throughout most of the regulation of play. That meant Pain had a lot of room to minimize damage on these CT rounds, allowing them to keep the CT economy quite strong. There was not much chance for NAVI to break that economy until deep into the second half, and by then they were on the back foot. Pain were threatening match point. They were decisively in the lead and looking to close out this first map. And they had a damn good shot at taking that win when they had match point on round 22, NAVI on a half buy, and had successfully boxed them out until less than a minute was left in the round. NAVI are in crunch time. All they can do is try and make this mid to cap push work. JL gets a great opener, creeping through mid, and that gives NAVI the go ahead to make the push happen. The problem for Pain is that they're way out of position. Davideus, who just died, was supposed to be the rotator for sight, so the other two A players are isolated off site towards long, giving NAVI a window to get the plant down. And as the other B players rotate in for the retake, the trades just simply don't go Pain's way. It's a fortress to get back into A site, and Bit from Gandalf, Wonderful from Cat, the trades just go NAVI's way, leaving NQZ in a 1v3. He jumps up on the site and starts getting the picks in short order, coming down to a final bid on JL with the pistol in his hand. Unfortunately, the bomb timer is too low. What could have been a 1v3 clutch to win the map is torn out of Pain's hands, as well as most of their economic strength. This gives NAVI the clear window to force us into overtime, and like we'll talk about much more when it comes to Mirage, when NAVI gets to this point in the game, they simply outclassed Pain. Their overtime play on Dust 2 and Mirage was simply perfect. The pressure definitely seemed to get to Pain, and they just weren't playing as sharp when it came down to these clutch moments. NAVI end up stealing Dust 2 out from underneath them with a dominant overtime performance to go up 1-0 in the series. But things are not looking that bad as we head to Nuke, as Pain are an incredible Nuke team, and it's been one of NAVI's most vulnerable maps over the last handful of months. And I think a lot of that is still unfortunately the case. I'm not really sure how to diagnose it because I feel like NAVI have the right tactics. They're not missing any of the smoke setups, the upper timings that I see from other teams, but they're just not very good at converting these T rounds. I don't know if it's like a positional thing. They definitely don't have someone who plays outside with the rifle like a Nico or a Donk. I would say a lot of it definitely resides with JL just being on such an inconsistent run of form. He's awful in this game, there's no other way to put it. Goes 9 for 17, only 2 more kills than Alexi B, and JL is supposed to be the guy. He's supposed to be the catalyst to push this team to its furthest heights. I mean, he is the major MVP after all. So maybe it's one of those things where Alexi and Blade need to go back to the drawing board and try and reinvigorate JL on this map, get him activated in some different spots maybe. It's kind of hard to say. One thing I'll also say is that we don't really see much of the super dense utility upper crunches from NAVI I've noticed. The kind of rain in a bunch of mollies and flashbangs from roof kind of A pushes like I highlighted in our Bet Boom recap a few days ago. But let's also call a spade, and Pain were also very sharp shooting throughout this game. Kawas, Snow, NQZ, Davideus wasn't even really required that much. They were just hitting their shots, especially when we get into the second half. One thing Pain did fantastically throughout the series is they won the majority of pistols. They win both the pistol rounds here. They convert the force buys thereafter. They only have some slip-ups in the first half in terms of winning the first couple of force buys, but they still dominated the first half, so I'm not going to hold that against them. Of course, the one thing you have to shout out is Snow with this incredible 1v2 clutch on the second half pistol. If he doesn't win this, who knows what NAVI can do with that kind of momentum. You never want to give this team a chance, something we'll talk about more in just a little bit. Yeah, not much more to say about this. Pain just are a very disciplined, well-trained nuke team, and honestly, if you want to model like what a prototypical successful nuke looks like, watch Pain VODs. They do it better than a lot of teams in the world. Which is how they equalize this series, heading to a titular Mirage closer. And when we boot up on a Mirage, and Pain jump out to a 6-0 lead, I was like, alright, It's over. The clickbait gods have granted me the gift of both Navi and Vitality getting eliminated. This is going to be a good day. Unfortunately, the game is not decided in 6 rounds, and Navi did fantastically in the back half of their CT defense to rally back and keep this close at 7-5, heading into their own T-side campaign. The problem was, Pain won both pistol rounds. I would have thought combining that with their momentum coming off of Nuke, winning both pistol rounds exponentially increases your odds of winning, so at that point I really feel like Navi were in the back seat and having to fight from behind. But in the 11th hour, we've talked about him a lot, when Navi needed him most, J Legend showed up in the server. He led the way on their CT half, and combining with Bit and Emma, they were just so good at blowing up this Pain defense. They kept the CTs totally boxed out of mid. There was nothing Pain could do to contest the mid control from Navi. And this looked like the T-sides of Navi that let them go on that crazy run of being undefeated on Mirage earlier last year, where they put teams in the torture chamber, where you had wonderful watching window, you had Emma playing fast over the top towards connector, and JL coming out through underpass. No matter which way you cut it, mid was on total lockdown. You had Bit lurking on the extremities, be it palace or apartments, and Alexi B playing support for wonderful in mid. This was the shut down T-side of Navi that we have not seen in such a long time at this point. Despite all that, Pain managed to take opportunistic round wins interspersed with Navi's dominance to keep things close. They had that round lead and never overly capitulated the advantage, culminating in them getting match point, series point, up 12-10. The problem is, with no money left on either side, like the fucking Undertaker appearing at the worst possible moment for your favorite wrestler, Blade calls a timeout. And it goes about as well as you could expect it. I mean, Pain were up in a 4v3 situation, but Emma gets a godlike flank again through CT again, and it blows up the entire round. This was basically the death knell. Like, this round happens, I feel like Pain, they get a little bit deflated, they get a little bit behind on themselves because they know they can't really contest the next round, they're broke. It goes to overtime, and once again, Navi are just built for these kinds of situations. They've been here so many times in so many other grueling series. I really think if we did this match again with the benefit of this experience that Pain have now gained, I would say Pain are liable to win it more often than not. I think they showed an incredible level of Counter-Strike, and it took Navi finding some of their best form that they've been missing for several months to battle back and stay alive. Maybe it's the turning corner for them as well. We'll have to wait and see. All I know is that as a fan and as a viewer, we got excellent goddamn Counter-Strike from both teams, and that's really all you can ask for. Alright, that's going to be it for me today. Make sure you guys leave a like, leave a comment down below, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It helps out immensely in the YouTube algorithm, so thank you for doing it. Thank you to Skin Club for sponsoring this video. If you check the top link in the description, you'll get a 7% deposit bonus the next time you fill up. Please gamble responsibly and safely. Thank you to our channel members: Justin, Jesse, Furley, Dr. Cocktor, Milan Berta, Bubblesj, Patatas Kaftesi, PTR, B1, Cody Foxworthy, and Justin Vegt. If you want to become a channel member, you can do so at the link in the description down below and support me directly. For $5 a month, you get an exclusive role in our community Discord, as well as your name at the end of the video, just like these guys. Thank you so much to our channel members. Follow me on twitch.tv/LionHeartZ. I stream Sunday through Friday at 8:30 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. Oh my god, I'm tired. Alright, I'm going to bed.